Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the stream. Yay. Hype. Uh, yeah. So I don't really have a clear plan for what we're going to work on today. Kind of like Wednesday. Wednesday's stream was a little sad because normally the window where I do my ancestry research covers up part of the control panel that shows me whether or not my camera is working, and it turns out my camera wasn't working the whole time. But fine, like fine. You're not here to see me. So, yeah. So I was thinking we have a couple of different directions that we can go in the tree if we want to sort of follow a logical research plan. And I think I'm going to save. So where we left off was we did more work last week or on Wednesday to shore up what we know about Antipas Hammond here and Beulah Blodgett. And we still don't feel quite confident enough to be certain to plug in Joseph and Rachel Hammond as the parents of Antipas, but we think that's a pretty solid lead. And that comes to us from the Hammond book here. So normally on the Wednesday streams, we focus on books and manuscripts. So we spent some time in that book on Wednesday, and we found here a profile for a Joseph Hammond in the Hammond book, who, here, this guy. Joseph, who married Rachel Winslow, said to have moved to the state of New York, all trace being lost, which would kind of align with some of the stuff that we knew about Antipas being in upstate New York, and he died relatively young, and we found the guardianship record for his children, including my great-great-grandfather Honeywell. And then we thought that's a pretty solid connection, given that Joseph has listed here children named Antipas, a child named Antipas. There is one other Antipas in this book, and it's Joseph's father. So that's okay. Hey, we see where that name entered the family line. So that looks really, really, really good. We don't have documentary record of this being the relationship. And if we go back here to our guy Antipas, we have an ancestry hint here. You will notice Ancestry is offering us the same book as a hint here. I'm not using those books on Ancestry's site. I'm going out and showing you where you can find them for free. It's the same book. Ancestry just has a little bit more metadata about the book that makes it helpful, but you don't have to have Ancestry to be able to make use of a lot of those family books if they're out of copyright. You could just use them on, I use archive.org. Google Books is another great source. WorldCat and HathiTrust also have frequently have copies of the books, so there's a lot of options and they're free. So we found that this Antipas here is in the Hammond book, which we knew. We also found on Wednesday that he is listed in there is a Blodgett book, and we knew from marriage records in Vermont that Antipas married Beulah Blodgett. So those two are listed in a book of Blodgett descendants. And what we hadn't done on Wednesday, we didn't follow that lead back. We found it relatively later in the stream. So we have the potential of doing with Blodgett what we did with Shumway, which is whoop, zip all that way back to the original ancestor, however far back that book goes. Looks like they are looking at a Thomas of Cambridge. Cool. So we can do that. The other thing we found that is more in line with the kind of records that I typically look at on a Sunday stream is the Rochester birth record for an Antipas Hammond, son of Joseph and Rachel. Seems pretty likely that that's going to be the same person and the same family as are named in the Hammond book, right? Joseph, Rachel, 5 children. And if we go into the record, remember that we're still taking advantage of our Ancestry free trial membership. That's going to expire in a couple of days. But for the moment, we've got Antipas, child of Joseph and Rachel. Here's a nice thing that you can do with a resource like this. Now, this, I am pretty sure that this book is available in other sources, and I'll be honest, this is one of the kind of ones that I've not gone and looked for in free sources. Might be worth our while to go and dig around and see if we can find this, because a lot of these New England records have already been published by lots of other places, right? Because this is based on whatever the handwritten church books were from the, in this case, we've got 1800s, 1700s. They'll go back well into the 1600s. So those have been transcribed many, many, many times since they were originally created, right? Those original records, they don't change. You either have them or they're lost. So frequently people will go through and transcribe them and re-index them. And you can see here that this is a book where this is clearly not, it's not likely to be the original order that this book was written in. And you can see here what they've done is that they've transcribed them and then they've re-indexed them and put them in order by family. Because the dates are all over the place. This won't be the order that they were recorded originally. And then at the end of the lines here, oftentimes you can see a little note out, CR1, there's some CR2s. There's going to be an index in this, or a key in this book somewhere that will tell us what those abbreviations mean. And those are pointers in some form to whatever the original records were. So those original records are still out there. Don't know who has those. And then this book and perhaps other transcriptions and other reindexes of these may also be available. But in the meantime, something that we can do with a book like this is we've got Antipas here listed as child of Joseph and Rachel. So he's in alphabetical order where you would think. We've also got Antipas spelled with two S's. Remember that spelling at this time in this historical period is not really a thing. We're talking about handwriting and all kinds of variations. But child of Benjamin and Elizabeth, we know that that's the Antipas who is the father of this Joseph. So they're right there, both in Rochester, Massachusetts. So that's good information. Something else that we can do is look for the Hammond book in this tab here told us that Joseph had Abigail, Matilda, Nancy, and Stephen in addition to Antipas. So it leads to the question of, are they perhaps also in here? And we happen to be on the page where Abigail, nope, we're not on the page where Abigail might be. Abigail might be on the preceding page. If we go here, we find, so what we want to look for is, okay, there's a bunch of Abigails, great. And look, here we have Abigail, child of Joseph and Rachel, baptized August 25, 1780. That's an interesting thing because if we go back forward, hold that date in your head, August 25, 1780. If we go back here to Antipas, he was also baptized August 25, 1780. So that's interesting. This leads us to a conversation. Notice the reason we know it's a baptism is because it's abbreviated BP. If it were a birth, it would likely be abbreviated B, or I'm seeing some records on this page that just have the date, and they are in a thing. I'm going to go up to the top and say, yeah, the heading is births. So if it doesn't say in this book, that means it's a birth date, but the BP means that it's a baptism date and not a birth date. Now, is it possible that a child was born on baptized on the day it was born? Possible. But not very likely. That makes us wonder some things about the place where this was recorded. Was that record pulled from a church record? It's a baptism, so that seems likely, as opposed to a town record. And then what do we know about the practices of the church? We know that they practice baptism of children because it does say child and of parents. So this is probably not an adult baptism. And it was really common in a lot of cultures, in a lot of places, and in a lot of Protestant cultures, for children to be baptized as infants pretty close to the time they were born. But we don't know, we just don't know at what age, right? So is it possible that Antipas and Abigail were twins and that they were baptized together because they were born together? That is a thing we sometimes see, of course. Sometimes the church records will actually say that it's a twin, or they'll record them together. This doesn't tell us that. It doesn't mean it's not the case. I'm now going to click back over to the book, and I want to look at a thing. If we assume that this list of children is in order of birth, which we don't have to assume, it doesn't say. It's not alphabetical. They would tend to want to list them in order of birth, but we don't know. They're not giving us any dates. What I wanted to see was, is there any note that they're twins? Because that tended to be noteworthy. People tended to say that. No mention of it. Are they listed next to each other? I would expect if they were close in age, they would be next to each other, and they're not. There's 2 children listed in between them. I pretty much guarantee you that in the 1700s, they weren't having quadruplets. So I don't think that's likely. But again, that's all a lot of supposition. We can't totally rule that out. Let's go look for the other children and see what we find. So we're looking for Matilda, Nancy, and Stephen if we're going alphabetically. Oh, interesting. There's a Beulah. Okay. Okay. Matilda. So we're looking for M. We're still in the Hammonds as far as I can tell. Yep, checking at the top of the page to make sure we're still in the Hammonds. What I'm seeing is that there are, boy oh boy, are there a lot of Hammonds in Rochester, Massachusetts. A lot. A lot. Okay. I have yet to find. Okay, so there's some Josephs in here, by the way. We're going to not get distracted. Not getting distracted by Joseph. Not happening. Not happening. What we want is Matilda. Nope, not to the T's yet. Okay. Next page, we should get us a Matilda if she's in here. Hey, there she is. Joseph and Matilda, child of Joseph and Rachel, baptized August 25, 1780. Huh. We have now 3 children that were baptized on that day. Oh, look on this page. Nancy, child of Joseph and Rachel, baptized August 25, 1780. So we now have 4 children of Joseph and Rachel that were all baptized on the same date in Rochester. And like I said, that way stretches the bounds of credibility to think that Joseph and Rachel had quadruplets. So I don't think we're talking about a newborn infant baptism for all 4 of those children, right? Not plausible. It's just not likely. Let's go look for Stephen and see if we hit all of them. Let's see what we can find. So there's some S's, right? We're looking in, this is the list of all kinds of records from a wide historical time range in Rochester, Massachusetts. And we're looking for a Stephen, but we're specifically, okay, good, we got some Stephens. We're looking for the Stephen who is the son of Joseph and Rachel, which we do not have. We don't have one. Don't have it at all. So not a different date, just not at all. Not at all. Is there anything in here that could be a misspelling of Joseph and Rachel? Not really. Those are all pretty clearly other names of other people. Joseph and a different spouse. Nope. Like, there's not really any ambiguity. They're just not here. Okay, so Stephen is not here in Rochester. In the Hammond book, we had Stephen listed last. So one possible interpretation would be that Stephen was born after 1780. So he wasn't in that grouping. Another one would be possibly related. He may have been baptized somewhere else. It is unusual, though. What we're seeing is we've got 4 children who are all baptized around the same time, but we don't know when their births were. We just don't know. There are stories that I make up and tell myself when I'm thinking about how that works. For example, I'm thinking about, like, they're farmers, they don't go to church very often, or perhaps they can't go to church because they're behind on their tithes or they're in trouble in some way, and then they resolve the issue, or they've been blowing off church and then the elders come and talk to them and say, you really should not be blowing off church. And something happens where they've not been baptizing their children as soon as their children are born for whatever reason. And then something happens that brings them back into the church, and now they're baptizing their children. And so they have a backlog of unbaptized children that they're going to bring all in and get baptized all at once. We don't think these are going to be infant quadruplets or triplets. It's we don't have any reason to think there's twins in there or that there aren't. But what we know is that they brought in a group of 4 children, which means at least some of those 4 children are older. And we don't know, we have no idea how much older. We are looking at 1780, which means we're in a time period. Oh, the war was going on. That's a reason to not take your children into town to baptize them. You might be busy fighting a war. Maybe the family was, maybe Joseph was off fighting in the war. We don't actually know. We don't know a whole lot about Joseph, other than that all trace of him was okay. So there's all kinds of stuff going on, right, at that point. What we know is batch of 4 children, and because they're all baptized on the same day, we now have a pretty good idea that that's not oftentimes if I have a list of children and they're all baptized, and we only have baptisms, we don't have births, which is really common if you're looking in, say, English records. That's a super common that you would have further back English records where you don't have a birth at all. The only record you have of a child is that it was baptized. In those time periods and places, you can frequently, if they don't record the birth date, you can usually assume that the child was born within a month or 2 of when that baptism occurred, because you're looking at, you go research a little bit of the practices of that church and so on, and you're figuring out that they practiced infant baptism. Oftentimes they would go to like the first Sunday church service after the child was born, so it was within the week, within a couple of days. Right? You can start to look for those kinds of patterns and make some assumptions. And in New England, I would tend to make assumptions like that, except in this case where we've got 4 children baptized on this one date. So maybe somebody was born in August of 1780, but we don't know that it was Antipas. We could perhaps guess, because of the order that these children were listed, he may be the one that was the closest to August 1780, right? So he may have been the youngest one of these 4 when he was baptized, but that doesn't tell us that he was born in 1780 necessarily. Do we have what we had when we looked for him last time? Because we had him in the 1810 census. The 1810 census gave us him as a head of household, and there was only 1 adult male in the household, which means that was Antipas. And that adult male, based on age, would have been born sometime between 1766 and 1784. So could he have been born right in 1780? That certainly fits, right? We don't have a problem with that range. We might also think about the time when he and Beulah were married. If we assume that that was a first marriage for Antipas, then early to mid-20s is a good guess as to how old he would be at the time of that marriage. And if he was born around or just before 1780, that would fit pretty well. So we don't hate any of that. So we could, at this point, do we want to go plug that in and say that maybe he was born about 17? Oh, wait, we just got to go edit here. Okay, about 1780 in Rochester. We don't actually know for sure that he was born in Rochester, Massachusetts, right? Because he could have, the family could have lived somewhere else and moved into Rochester, and then the Rochester said, hey, we have a requirement, you baptize all your children, and they go, oh, okay, let's bring all 4 of our children. That seems less likely, because if he is the child of Joseph and Rachel, then Joseph and Rachel were born, or Joseph was born there. All right, so that's Joseph's hometown. So it's not likely that they lived somewhere else. Although they could have, it's not likely that Joseph took his whole family if he went into the Revolutionary Service, right? They would have stayed behind with family members. So all of that, we're making wild guesses here, right? And it occurs to me, I haven't plugged this in. If I plug this in, what I'm saying is that I definitely think that this is that this is my Antipas. Let me back out of that, because have we proven that? We now know, I think it's absolutely fair to say, based on what we know from this list of birth records, that the person described in this, the Joseph and Rachel described in this birth record, are definitely the same people as this profile in this book. Those people are definitely the same as each other. And so we have birth or baptism records for the first 4 children listed in this book, exactly the way the book says. We don't have Stephen, but we're okay with that because maybe he's born later. And then somehow, and then what we know is that my Antipas shows up, our first record of him existing, that we know is my guy, is the marriage record in Whitingham, Vermont. So the challenge here is we don't yet have that bridge that gets us from Whitingham, Vermont back to Rochester, Massachusetts. We don't yet know if this guy who is in Whitingham, Vermont is the same as the guy in Rochester, Massachusetts. We just don't know that. Let's see, though, something that might help us do that. So the 1810 census only has 1 Hammond in it, in that place in Vermont. So we have a record of an Antipas existing in Rochester. We have a record of an Antipas existing in Whitingham. We know it's not a common name. Even if we searched all the records everywhere else and we never found another person with that name, the fact that they have the same name just isn't, in this case, with it being such an unusual name, I think you probably could make it. You could say, yeah, that's good enough to know it's the same person. I think you could. I try not to be in the habit of doing that. I try to be pretty tough on same name because it gets really easy to start thinking that just because somebody's named Abigail Hammond, that might be the same person. And now you're really in a risky spot. Like, that's not likely to be true, right? That's not a safe assumption is what I'm saying. So, all right, I'm going to move this over there. I have moved a window. There. Okay, so that's not likely enough to be true, and I don't feel good about it. And so what I try to do is just be really rigorous about, regardless of who it is, saying name alone, name and age alone are not good enough. And that comes from, that's all the paranoia that I typically have. It's the same paranoia I normally have because I have been burned by this many a time in other research with other names. So let's try to play that game with Antipas and see what happens. Something that I might try to do is, so here's my problem. Antipas here is going to be too young, likely, if we assume that he was born around 1780. He is too young to be appearing as a head of household. Same problem we had with Honeywell, right? In any census records that would go back to Rochester, Massachusetts. So it's not likely that I can tie this guy to that. If I were to find that Beulah was born in Rochester, that would be a good clue, but she wasn't. She was born in Whitingham. We have her birth record. She's actually recorded in Vermont. So we don't have her family tied necessarily back to Rochester. We do have her parents because we have her birth record and we have her in the book. So I could poke around at her family and see if they have a connection to Rochester. Because Vermont is just being settled at this point in history, which means that chances are the people that we see in Vermont came from somewhere else. So that's got potential. But what else can we try to do to tie those people together? Hang on, I'm moving your window around because I really want to be able to see. Yeah. Please join the chat. Ask questions. Would love to hear from all of you. Okay. So how do we tie Antipas back to Rochester? We're not going to likely find records of him as an adult in Rochester because he's not actually legally an adult until he gets to Whitingham and gets married, if we assume that he was born around 1780. So we're not going to find adult records for him in Rochester. But something we can do. So let's go ahead and play this little game of, let's do a what if. What if he was the son of Joseph Hammond? And I'm going to go ahead and plug in Joseph Hammond with a question mark. That is my way of reminding myself that I'm not confident that this person is the right person. I might be not confident about them in a variety of ways. But this is the question mark is so that when I go back and look at this profile later, what I want to make sure I don't do is I do not want to pile on a ton of research about Joseph and his parents and his siblings and his family until I feel really confident that he really is the father of my Antipas that's in my tree. This takes us back to, as a reminder, kind of one of the habits that I got into is this is why I started as close to myself with people that I know are connected to me and that I work my way back gradually. I don't go racing back without a lot of documentation and then try to work forward because I don't want to put a ton of research into Joseph here until I know for sure whether he's actually my ancestor. If I put a ton of research into him and he turns out not to be my ancestor because there's some other Benjamin that had his son Antipas too that was named after his uncle or whatever, because that could happen. If I find out that it's somebody else, I end up having to tear out a lot. In this case, I think it's pretty likely that Antipas is a child of this family. So Joseph is probably at least a cousin or a great uncle. But I still don't want to waste a lot of time. So I do tricks in Ancestry to remind myself of these things. One of the nice things you can do when you're building out an ancestry tree that you can't do in WikiTree and you can't do in Family Search because those are shared with other people. Now in Ancestry, my tree is mine. So I can have all kinds of little special codes and stuff that I do. And you'll see a lot of other researchers do this. The nice thing about a question mark or other forms of punctuation is that as long as the validation rules allow me to do it, there's types of punctuation that I'm not allowed to use. Like I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to do that one will work. This one will work, right? So there's a bunch of things I can do, but there's a few I can't do, and it'll tell me. If I find one that I can do, is that the punctuation doesn't affect whether or not I get hints and what I do when I do a search. It doesn't break the search. If I were to put in here unknown or something like that, right? Or maybe, let's say I do a maybe. The problem with that is that it's a word and Ancestry is not going to know that it's not his name. So it's going to do searches as if that was the poor guy's last name, and I don't want it to do that. It's going to give me a bunch of garbage data. Punctuation marks and other kinds of markings are going to do that without breaking search and without giving me unwanted hints. Yay. So question mark. Sometimes I'll put more than one question mark if I'm really uncertain. And there's other tricks that I do on my trees that we haven't needed yet on this one, but I'll talk about them if we get to a need for them. So I'm going to put him in there with a question mark. Because here's my thinking. Joseph Hammond could very well have been, how old is he? He's born, we don't know when he's born. Oh, do we? Oh, we do. We do. So based on the book, so we're back in the book here. Here's Joseph. He's born 1747 and marries 1769. So 1747, could he still be living in 1810? Sure. Sure he could. Right? Could he be living in the 1800 census? Sure he could. Right. I'm not going to go ahead and put all the details, but I'm going to put, and we do know that he was born in Rochester, Mass. So, partly because we saw, all right, I see the typo. Ancestry is going to fix it for me. There we go. There we go. We don't know when he died. All trace of him was lost, right? They think he might have been in New York, but we don't actually know if he stopped in New York or if he kept going. We know that some of these Hammonds ended up in Pennsylvania. So what I'm kind of curious to see is, where is he in the 1800 census? Is there a child in the 1800 census that would be the right age to be my Antipas? That would be a reason. But also, do we see him living anywhere near? And then maybe also remember that with Antipas, the thing that was the breakthrough for us was that we found probate records relating to his death. What if we found Joseph Hammond's will somewhere? We don't know where he was when he died, but what if we found his will? What if we found property records? Anything at all that we might find for this Joseph that might name Antipas, that would be a breakthrough, and that would confirm for us that that's this parent relationship. The trick being, I can't get Ancestry to deliver me any hints about that unless I actually put somebody in the tree as a placeholder. So You will often see this referred to as a fishing expedition. And doing it to get record hints is one type of fishing expedition. The other one that we haven't talked about really on the stream yet, but we may in the future, is a fishing expedition for DNA. Because another thing that I can do is plug in some of these questionable ancestors to a tree that has my DNA results linked to it. And then Ancestry is going to helpfully tell me if any of those relationships are supported by the DNA record. I have used that on my other tree. I'm still trying to figure out how to show you the DNA process because it shows a lot of people's profiles and photos and stuff that I don't want to expose on the stream. So I'm working out some strategies for how to show that to you usefully because it's a really, really powerful tool when we do it that way. I may do screenshots or something, but I have actually used DNA to plug in some of these questionable relationships. And then when you find out that I share DNA with, let us say, descendants of the Blodgett family, that is sure good. That is a good strengthening argument for, yeah, okay, I'm descended from not just Hammonds, because if I found more Hammonds I was descended from, that would not be a big surprise. But I wouldn't expect to find that I'm share DNA with Blodgett descendants unless a Blodgett married into both of our families. Here it is. Especially if what you want to find is I share DNA with descendants of Blodgetts who themselves are not descended from Hammonds, right? Because if they were descended from Hammonds, that would explain where the DNA came from. Okay, so we're fishing for records, not DNA today, fishing for records of Joseph Hammond. Let's go see, now that we've added him and I stalled a little bit, did Ancestry have time to come up with some hints? Here's a few. Let's go see if they're interesting. What do we know about Joseph? Well, we knew already that he was born in 1747, son of Antipas and Abigail. I'm not going to bother to attach that record right now because that one, I'll keep it if we find that we're keeping him in the tree. That'll be great. Here's the marriage record for Joseph, or a report of the marriage record for Joseph and Rachel with the date. That matches what the book says. This is interesting. We've got a book called Mayflower Births and Deaths. First appearance of the Mayflower in this tree. Don't know what that's about. But there he is. Oh, it says he died in 1778, and that seems unlikely because he was listed as the father of children baptized in 1780. That's interesting. It's not out of the question though, right? Huh. I'm going to click through the record because I want to see if that's actually what the record says. So that's the first thing I want to do. Is that actually what the record actually says? Aha! It's not. It's not what the record says. It says he died after April 1778. And then we have this reference here. Sorry, let me blow that up a little bit. And then we have this reference, Plymouth County Deeds. So what that must surely mean is he is named in a deed of some kind. We don't know what kind, but he's named in some kind of a deed. And we might also notice his sister, this is his sister Elizabeth, is also named in, almost certainly in the same deed. It's the same number. We don't know what that means. We don't know what kind of deed it was. But it means that he was named in such a way that made it clear that he was still living at the time the deed was written. Great. That's fine. We knew that. And this is why digging through the original record is useful rather than just looking at the summary, right? Because Ancestry must not have had a place for the transcriber to put the word after. So what we know is he died after 1778. I mentioned this on the stream 1 or 2 streams ago, where we had the date range for Antipas, and I didn't put it in the year field. I didn't put it in the actual date field, in part because Ancestry does that all over the place. It squashes something important like the word after. And I want the word after because it matters. He didn't die in 1778. He was most likely still having children after that time because we we're guessing that Stephen Hammond, who is the youngest or the last listed of his 5 children in that book, we're guessing that Stephen Hammond wasn't baptized with his siblings because he hadn't been born yet. It's not the only explanation, but that's what we're guessing. So we've got Joseph here, and then our last record is another birth record for Joseph. So this has unfortunately not helped us because these hints didn't tell us anything that we didn't already know from the book. And what it hasn't done is given us anything that is particularly tied to our guy Antipas. We know that he had a son Antipas. We still were being incredibly pedantic about whether it was our Antipas. However, let's go see what else there is. We're going to just go do a general search because the general search doesn't, the hints don't always turn up everything else that will be in a search. So we want to do both. We got birth, we already knew that. Birth, we already knew that. Remember how I said you get back that far into Massachusetts, it's been transcribed and reported in many, many books, which is true. So we have these 3 that are all basically probably pointing to the same single original record. This one doesn't have a date and doesn't match our person, so that's not super helpful. I could, oh yeah, if I hover over this, I could click through that and find, I don't think I need it. There's a Josephus Hammond with a different birth date. We already know, Joseph's not like a rare name. There we go. Here he is, Josephus, child of a different person. Also, remember, tons of Hammonds in Rochester. Not a big deal. There's the marriage record. There's Rochester. I want to do plenty of stuff about Rochester, lots of Josephs. It's too common a name. This is a problem. See, different Joseph, also marrying in 1769. It's not what I want. Here's what I want. I'm going to narrow down the search, first of all, to just see, can we pick him up? Aha. Can we pick up our Joseph in any? Well, here's a Joseph in Rochester in 1790. So we like that. Why don't we go take a look? That looks awfully nicely formatted to be 1790. Oh, okay. All right, fine. Wow, that's kind of cool. Okay, heads of families. In, unfortunately, no particular order. So we're just going to have to find him on the page. But we've got a Hammond here, another Hammond here. Check out that awesome handwriting. Looking for more Hammonds. Joshua, Moses. Jump on, shout it out in the chat if you see him before I do. We're looking for Joseph. Hamat, that's not us. There's a Joseph Hammond. Alrighty, Joseph Hammond. He is listed right next to a Benjamin Winslow, and we know that he married a Rachel Winslow, so that is of some interest. Here's our problem. Now we want to scroll back up to the top and see, what do the columns mean? Free white males of 16 years and upwards. Free white males under 16 years. Free white females, all other free peoples, and slaves. Let's try to hold that in our heads while we scroll down and see. So it's adult men, male children, all females, all other free white people. That's confusing. I don't know what that would mean now that I think of it. And slaves. No slaves in Rochester. Whew. So what we have is one adult male. That'll be Joseph. All we know is that he's over 16. Not super helpful. 3 males under 16 and 7 females? 7? That's a lot. That's a lot of females. That's a lot more than the children that we saw listed in that profile. Which, so that would be him and presumably a spouse, we don't know, with 9 children, and we only have a listing for 5. We do have, and we only had 2 boys. Out of that listing of 5, we had 2 boys, Antipas and Stephen, and 3 girls, Abigail, Matilda, and Nancy. So, certainly possible that they had then lots more children. A lot more children. Could there have been a second family living with them? Yes. There is not a second adult male. So if there's a second family, it doesn't have an adult male in it. But could it have been a sister or other people's kids? Or could have been. It's probably not hired hands because, again, we don't have more males over 16. So, but who knows who all could be living there. So it's a bigger household than we expect. Also, we know that there were other Joseph Hammonds, or at least a Josephus, which could have been abbreviated as Joseph. We know there were others in Rochester. So we don't actually know for sure that that's this guy. And then we'll just check to see if there's any other Joseph Hammonds on this page. And then it would be prudent to go back through the rest of the Rochester pages if there's any more than one. Right? Yeah, it says it's page 3 out of 5. So there's more pages. We could go look for more Hammonds. But the way that's formatted, it's not going to tell us a ton. It's just going to tell us. All right, so then we have 1810 in Hingham, which is in Plymouth County. So it's in the same county. Is that going to be our same guy who has moved in 1810? We don't know. All right, that's going to be tough to know. I suppose if I found a Joseph Hammond in 1790 in Hingham and not in Rochester, and then there was another one in Rochester, I'd say, okay, the Hingham guy is the Hingham guy, and he's over there doing his thing. All right. See, we've got a Joseph Gammond in Hingham. Essex, which is not in the same county, but to my mind, Massachusetts is not that big. So we've got a whole bunch of these. What I'd actually like to do is see if I can find him in 1810. Some of these we already had. So I'm using the filters on the left-hand side to narrow it down. We've got a Joseph in Hingham. So there's 2 in Hingham, probably, unless they're misindexed and those are the same person. One in New York. Westchester, New York. That's interesting. So there's one in New York. That book said, we care about that because the book said Joseph Hammond went to New York. There's a Joseph Hammond in Rhode Island in 1810. No, that's not even 1810. Ancestry does that sometimes. 1744 is a lot earlier. Too early for our guy. Yes, too early. That's before he was born. So that's not our guy. What I am looking for is, see here. All right. We don't need the World Explorer plan because we don't need Joseph Hammond in Tasmania because that doesn't help me. Okay. So I was looking to see if there was any record that would be of any interest here. It's just not going to tell us enough, really. Okay, so that's definitely 2 different Joseph Hammonds in Hingham. And if we think about household size, maybe this one is slightly more likely to match our guy from Rochester. If it does at all, it could be yet another completely different guy. What about this guy? We don't know. Okay, so we could look at that. I'm going to go back and see if we can find him in 1800. Guy in Hingham. Much smaller household. Oh, whoa! That right there. That right there. Look at that. Looky there. There's a Joseph Hammond in Whitingham, Vermont. Huh. There's a Joseph Hammond in Whitingham, Vermont. I really want that to be our guy. I really do. I really, really do. I really want that. What does he have here? Okay. First thing I'm going to look for. Does he have a second male person in the household who would be the right age to be Antipas if Antipas was born in 1780-ish, before 1780? The answer is, if this index is right, it looks like he doesn't, right? That's a much younger man. That's a younger man. Could be If we say that Stephen was younger, was born after 1780, then that could be our Stephen. We got a young woman under the age of 10. That would have to be somebody born after 1790. So that's a whole other female person. We've got a potential spouse here. That could be Rachel. Rachel. So it's a smaller household. Oh, and we have another older female, age 26. That could be one of the older daughters if they were born a lot before 1780. And remember that 1780 is a baptism. So that's possible. The other older children could be moved out. I'm going to click through. Here's Joseph Hammond, because the first thing I want to make sure of, oh goodness, is was it transcribed correctly? Now, there are guides that you can go find out on the internets that will tell you what all these columns are, because you will notice this page doesn't have the columns on it. I'm going to see if page 1 in this section has the headings. It does not. So, whoa, there's some blodgets, though. See, we're just on a different page in the census, and we got some blodgets. That's pretty cool. Whoa, that's really cool. Okay. Well, let's go back to... So we got blodgets, but we knew that. We already knew that they lived there because she was born there in 1780, right? So the fact that there's a Blodgett family in Whitingham is actually not new information. We knew that. But what we're trying to do is tie... So we now know that a Joseph Hammond lived in Whitingham, which is the place that we know Antipas ended up living for a period of time before he went on to New York. Are there any other Hammonds not in this section? And then we're going to guess what the columns, what order the columns are in. Hang on. Let me go look that up. 1800 Federal Census Template. National Archives Worksheet. So you can look this up. This is the National Archives, and look it. It's just going to tell us what the order of the columns means, because on the page that we have, it's not clear. We're going to assume, because back on the way this is laid out, see how there's a double line here, and that would have been to help the census taker just as much to be able to read across. So we know that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 age categories for men, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 age categories for women, and that's what we see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can assume that that is going to read across the same way. And, click back over here, it goes from youngest to oldest. The 1790 census didn't. It actually went from oldest to youngest, if I remember right. So this now we're reading from youngest to oldest. So we now know that there are no males under 10. There is, in fact, it does actually mean one age 10 to 15. We would expect to see Antipas in here, right? Would be between age 16 and 25. Or, because we think he's about 20, maybe 21, right? We would expect to see him here. If he was even older when he was baptized in 1780, we might even find him up here being over the age of 26, but we don't. That 26 to 44 is the age for Joseph Hammond. Does that match? So if he's 44, but he's not over 45 because there's a separate column for 45 and over. So he's not older than 44. So what is 1800? Sorry, I am just that kind of bad at math. 1756. So that means he was born. Oh, that means he was born after 1756. Because if he was born in 1747, which we know that guy from Rochester was born in 1747, he'd be 53. That's probably not the same guy then. Probably not the same Joseph. It's a younger Joseph. It's a common name, but that's probably not Antipas's father, unless the columns are wrong, which too big of an assumption, right? So Yeah, see, it was almost hype, right? It was so close to being hype. It was almost hype because we almost had him. But I don't think we have him. I think he's not quite that guy. This guy doesn't seem to be old enough. And we would assume that Rachel might be close to his age, although she could be. She's likely to be closer to his age. She's probably not 10 years younger. So that means it's probably not the same guy in 1800. That is a bummer. It could be a cousin or whatever, but that doesn't help us. Plus, we already saw Antipas is not in that household because there's not a young man of the right age. So that doesn't help us. So we're just scrolling through just to finish off Whitingham. They've done Whitingham in alphabetical order, which is convenient in some ways. And there is a Winslow, which is of interest. I'm showing off my new standing desk, everybody. I'm tired of standing. Alrighty. So, oh hi. Here we are. We're down here now. Cool. Okay. So, bit of a bummer, not as big of a breakthrough as we hoped. I will show you a feature in Ancestry that I find helpful. I can actually save this to a thing called my shoebox. I'm going to wait. Hang on. I don't want to save this page. I want to save the correct page. So let's go all the way back to where we started here. Here we go. This is that the right page? No, it's not the right page. This is the right page. I want this record saved in my, I have the option of saving it to my Joseph Hammond. We don't think it's a match. I am going to save it to a thing called the Ancestry Shoebox. That feature is pretty useful. It does also turn into a place that records go that I forget about. So, is it off? It's not off. I'm right here. Hang on. Hang on. Let me check. What are you seeing? Twitch Studio is showing me camera. So, let me go double check. Let me look. I see it. I see me on the stream. You're just trolling me now. Don't troll me. That's mean. Okay. Okay, we've saved the shoebox. Means we can come back to that record later if we find, it seems like that's going to be a Joseph Hammond connected in some other way. The other possibility is just really, gotcha. I'm looking at the page to see, is there any evidence that would in any way suggest that the numbers are shifted over by one? Because I could get what I want if the numbers are shifted over by one. But there really isn't. Because I would expect all of the adult male heads of household to fall into one of these categories, and they do, right? If this column wasn't being used at all, I would say, okay, maybe that, but there's no evidence that those columns are shifted over. So I think this is right, and that guy's just too young. It's also possible he lied about his age, any number of other, but now we're stretching, right? We're not trying to force the record to fit what our theory is. It's just tantalizing that there's a Joseph Hammond in Whitingham. Let's go back and look some more. What we're going to do is we had filtered it to the 1800s. We're going to go back up to all census records, and then we're going to filter it down again to 1790. 1790 is the first time we had a U.S. federal census. And so now we have we have a Joseph Hammond in Rochester, and we have a we don't know Hammond in Rochester. Oh yeah, this is the one we looked at before that we said plausible for our guy, bigger household than we were expecting, but totally plausible. And this one, we could go in and read. This one has 1 male, 1 female, 3 boys under the age of 16. And we don't know for sure that it's Joseph. Let's go find out what they've done to the handwriting. Oh, this is on the same page. That's that same page. Well, heck. Okay. We already kind of looked at those Hammonds on here. Huh. Okay. Oh. we saw that. We saw Moses. What did we see? Moses was over here. Oh, yeah, that's this one. Oh, so what I just did was Ancestry has an index that lists all the people that were transcribed, and it lists them kind of in order. You can see that they're kind of not in order. But what I can do is I can look for who is that person. This one, I don't know who this is, and I don't know which record on this page it relates to. But I can look at who's nearby, and I can say, there are all kinds of problems with the transcription. Because this is Joshua. Yep. And oh, look, hang on. If I hover over it, that correction's already been submitted. That's Joshua. It just didn't come up for some reason. Moses here is, they read that as a Z. It's not a Z. It's just a fancy S. That's how that was written. Yep. Somebody's already submitted that. We've got Daniel. This one's got a problem. That's not a Louthworth. That's a Southworth. Yep, that's been submitted. That's not Fidian Barstow. That's Gideon. Yep, all right, taken care of. Never mind. They don't need my help. Never mind. It's fine. Other Ancestry users have already helped. But it allows me to go confirm, do I think that's actually Joseph that wasn't transcribed correctly? In this case, no, we found it. It's going to be referring to this one here, which is admittedly hard to read, but we think that says Joshua. So not our guy. Doesn't get me what I want. Okay, so we go back here. So we got 2 J's, and just in the search record, it doesn't come up. I wonder if I click through it. Yeah, sure enough, right? If I click through to this records page, it does give me the option of that Joshua. Whew, well, none of this is helping. None of this is really giving me anything. What if I go look for Ancestry? Is, as we kind of saw the other day when we were looking at all of Antipas's probate records in the state of New York, Ancestry, surprisingly, is just not that great. It's, when it's good with probate records, it's really good. And then other times it's just, it doesn't work, is not useful at all. But that is interesting. So I clicked on the category Court, Land, Wills, and Financial Wills, because that's the category that I'm guessing probates would be under. And this interesting thing comes up. Remember that date we saw Joseph died after 7th of April, 1778. So this must be the record that names him. Let's go find out what it says, and let's find out what it is. Okay. Oh, I love these. I love these. Okay. So this is a transcript. I'm going to turn this film strip off. We don't need it. This is a transcribed and like an abstract where somebody's gone through, of course, at this time period, these were all handwritten in fancy script, like the census we were just looking at. And so someone has gone through here, and what they've done is that they've transcribed. You'll often see this with wills, but it looks to me like there's more than just wills on this page. And they have basically skipped all of the other details, because probably this is a document that's this long with a lot of, like, by the grace of God stuff in it. Extra flowery language, and oftentimes if you're doing deeds, there'll be a description of the property that's like really big, and they've trimmed all that out, and they've done what's called an abstract, which is just some pertinent details about the record, and oftentimes that's enough for you to work from. If you like this record and you think it is for your ancestor, you want to go follow up and find the original and find out everything that it says. And then this wasn't transcribed by random volunteers on Ancestry. This is a book that was written at some point. So hopefully the transcription is maybe a little bit more reliable. And so what we want to do is we want to scroll on this page to find, I see some Hammond. But I don't see Joseph. Okay. So this is Jira Swift, which is fine. Give us a shout in the chat if you spot the Hammond. Or rather, sorry, if you spot the Joseph Hammond on this. There he is. Found him. Found him. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, why don't we, if we go back, I want to remind, yes, okay. No, this doesn't actually tell us. But, person, okay. Okay, so remember that these are all the siblings of the Joseph who is the son of Antipas. And trying to figure out is, okay, this is a Honeywell Hammond, Joseph, and Benjamin, as well as Job Haskell. Hang on, yes, Job Haskell, who is the husband of their sister Elizabeth. And wife Elizabeth. There she is. She's right there. So that's Elizabeth Hammond, who married Job Haskell. So this is Joseph Benjamin, which is a brother. Yes. Okay. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 of the children, siblings of their honored father deceased, and estate of our brother Jira deceased. So we had in the Hammond book 6 children. Yep, Jira's the oldest. He had already died by 1778. And then the only one not mentioned is Abigail. Jira and Abigail probably lived and died single in Rochester, is what they're thinking. Well, I wonder if they're not going by that deed as to why they think that. So there's this deed that exists, and so we don't know exactly what this deed is trying to do. But it is something to do with the land that they were left by their father. What's pertinent about this, why we think this is useful, is that it names them all as the children of their honored father deceased, and it names their brothers. So we now have 5 out of those 6 children sort of reconfirming. I'm going to assume that there are birth or baptism records for all of those children, but it's reconfirming that they are all siblings, and that at a minimum, Joseph is involved in this deed in Plymouth County in 1778. And he would have been listed as another late brother deceased if that were the case. So we know that these 4 are still living because they're parties to the deed. And the 5th is noted as deceased, and then Abigail's not mentioned at all. If Abigail were living and married, she would most likely be named in the same way that Elizabeth is named here, with her husband. So that hasn't happened. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know whether she would have had any, if she were a single woman, I don't know what property rights she might have had. So I don't know whether a single sister should have been named in that deed or if she would not have been named in that deed. It might have to do with, though, if she were single, she might be entitled to something out of her father's estate as a dowry if she were still unmarried. So it doesn't tell me enough to know whether Abigail is probably deceased by this time, or if she's simply single and not named because she's not a party, or something else entirely. It's also possible that she was married and they already got their part of the estate and she's not a party to it. We don't know. Oh, there is a thing. It does tell us that there is a will of their honored father deceased. So there was a will. We don't know if the will survives or not. The problem is, I'm feeling very tempted to get invested in this family of these Hammonds when I haven't yet done the work to prove that what I'm trying to do, the reason I'm in all this stuff, is that I'm trying to find a document that links that Joseph's family to my Antipas Hammond. I want that Joseph and my Antipas to be connected a little more strongly. So this is a will relating to Joseph and Joseph's father. What I want is a will relating to Joseph and Joseph's sons. That's what I'm looking for in probate. So I don't need this yet. I could, though, go ahead and throw this in Ye's shoebox as something that I want to maybe come back to so that I don't lose it. Because it didn't come up as a hint. I had to go digging for it a little bit. So maybe I don't want to lose it. All right, fine. So that's been done. 1826, well, kind of late. Died 1820. No, that's not too late for that. That's not too late for our guy. Is it 1877 in Plymouth County? So we like that. Is this going to be the same guy? Maybe not. Maybe not. Vermont. I'd really like one in Vermont. Can I get one in Vermont? Wills, estates, and guardian records. Okay, let's click through the wills, estates, and guardian records. So what I'm trying to do is navigate down to, can I find... I sure would like to find it at a minimum, right? Maybe I can find out who that Joseph that was listed in Vermont is. There are 3 records for Joseph Hammond in Vermont. So I've just drilled down a little, and that, what other possible names Joseph Hammond? Oh, really? In 1806. Oh, really? Oh, really? Joseph Hammond, 18. Okay, so that maybe is going to be the guy who's in that census record that we still don't know if that's our guy or not. So let's find out, what can we find out for this? Well, now, wait a minute. That's not helpful. Why is he... Okay. Okay. Okay, somebody has corrected this to say Joseph Hammond. Who did... I did that. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? What was I thinking? Squire of Halifax. Okay. Late of Halifax, of course, deceased. What am I doing? This guy, this will is clearly Joseph Perry. All of his wife and children's last names are right on here. I'm pointing at him with the mouse. That is, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Okay. I do weird things like this sometimes. I probably had a reason. What's my reason? Is it because... Is it because... Yes! He's on the next page. He's on the next page. He's on the next page. And why would I have done it that way? Because... Why did I do it that way? Because it's under... Because it's buried in here. It's not indexed separately, and I didn't have... Oh. Add a new person. Okay, let me fix this, maybe. I'm logged into my other account, my streaming account, so I can't just go delete... Can't go delete Cheryl's information. Okay, I can go fix this. Because there's a better... There didn't used to be a way to fix it this way. It didn't used to be possible to add a new person. Look at how I left myself a breadcrumb. That is so ridiculous. Okay, this is the thing I was trying to point myself to. I was trying to get to. Here is the thing. Okay. Upon application of Rachel Hammond and Baxter Hall for letters of administration on the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham, deceased, the same was granted them. So they were granted letters of administration. So that means that whatever date that was, pretty recent. This is usually the first thing that happened after a person died that I can find, is that you'd go to the probate court and you would apply for, we want permission to administer the estate. And so that would be the first thing that would happen. And the administering of the estate was something that would take time. You'd have to go find the will, get the will proved, pay the person's debts, figure out how much was left in their estate, distribute the stuff. Oftentimes you'd have to get receipts for all the stuff you distributed. You might sell some of their property to pay their debts. All kinds of stuff might happen. So you get that, and it was the administrators would put up a bond that would say, I assume that what they're saying is we're going to faithfully perform this administration, and if we don't, then we're going to, forfeit our something. So, okay, so they were granted administration, and here's what's super very interesting about that. That's Rachel Hammond. So now we know it doesn't actually say that it was his wife. However, you can imagine in 1806, there is absolutely no way that there's no way that a random other female person is going to be administrator of an estate, right? Some unrelated woman is not going to be generally the administrator of an estate. Unrelated men might do it all the time because they would hold a position in society such that that's what they would do. But women would not have. Certainly not if they were married to somebody else or whatever. Not even if it was a sister, unless really truly that was all there was, and they probably would have said. The most common scenario is it was extremely common for the widow to be an administrator of the estate. So I think we are pretty safe assuming that if Rachel Hammond is an administrator of Joseph Hammond's estate, that means that was his wife, or rather widow. And what's very interesting about that is that now places a Joseph who was married to a Rachel in Whitingham, Vermont. And it also makes me think another thing. I want to go back. I'm actually leaving that in a tab on purpose, and I'm going to open a second Ancestry tab because I want to go to my shoebox. What the heck did I just put in the shoebox? 1800. Okay, it's the 1800 census. I was going to say if it was the 1810 census, but it wasn't because he's dead by then. So he's in here. Those ages don't match. And yet, here's a Joseph and Rachel living in Whitingham, where the person we think their son was also living. And he'd just recently married that son of theirs. And that son is the right age, maybe-ish. It's just these ages don't quite match, and it's really frustrating. And I really wonder if they're just wrong. Or this is just the younger Joseph Hammond and Rachel's a coincidence, and he died relatively young. So he'd have been 44, so he might have been 50. Not unheard of that he might die at the age of 50. Okay, fine. Okay, that could happen. Let's go see if there's an index. I'm navigating on Ancestry's site, and this is a thing that you'll get with, there'll be these sort of subheadings of different kinds of records. So, for example, we've got all Vermont probates by county. So we're in Windham County, which is the county that Whitingham is in. If I wanted to be in a different county, which I don't, I could go do that. But here, what we're seeing is this is the probate records, volumes 3 and 4. And what I want to go see is what else does Whitingham County have? Because if there's an administration granted, that tells me there's probably more stuff later as the estate is proven and resolved and finalized. So what else can I find, and how easy or hard is it going to be to find it? Why don't we do that thing that we've been doing? Let's go to Family Search. Let's just do it on Family Search. Wait, I did this last time. That's not what we want. Okay. Nope. Okay, fine. Done. Okay. Here we are in Family Search. So what we wanted to do is we're going to go to the catalog, because odds are those probate records that have been imaged that Ancestry has, and Ancestry, honestly, they're getting better at the indexing of probate records, but they're not the best. It oftentimes is the case that it's actually easier to find probate records on Family Search, and they're a little bit more browsable. So I do oftentimes come over here. So I want to look up Whitingham. I want to go see. This actually is, then I can go all kinds of directions here, right? Because I can look around at all kinds of stuff.
Oh, and I make the same mistake every single time. I always go to the town for probate when the probate is stored at the county. So I didn't see probate, and then here it is. Ooh, probate records indexes. Very, very good. Excuse me. Okay, we got old index for what Marlborough District and general. Okay, fine, sure. So we could look at that. And then we have, probate records with general index. Probate records. That's the one we're looking at the moment. Ancestry had it dated as 1806. The specific one we were looking at. Oh, I didn't finish reading. Jabez Foster, Francis Porter, and Samuel Parker were appointed a committee to inventory and appraise the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham, deceased, and to make return in 60 days. Those were together. You can actually, they helpfully gave us these dividing lines. Okay, those two things are together. It doesn't say the date in that text, which means I have to scroll up and down. Aha! So this is July 1806 is the time the court convened. We might not know the exact day. But here's the one before it is 22nd day of July. So we know it's sometime in July of 1806. So we now know that there's a Joseph Hammond whose wife was named Rachel, who died in about 1806 in Whitingham. And we knew that there was a Joseph Hammond with a small family who lived in Whitingham in 1800. And again, this is just as a big old coincidence, because that happens to be where my ancestor Antipas married and where some of his children were born, including my great-great-grandfather Honeywell. So we know that we have, my family has a connection to Whitingham. Whitingham is not that big. We looked in the records for Rochester. We were all over the place, right? Meaning lots of Hammonds, loads of Hammonds, plenty of Hammonds. Whitingham, not so much. We think, right? We don't think there's as many Hammonds in Whitingham. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we've got an estate. What I want to see is who's named in his will. Can we find his will? Who's in it? Where's it at? And we're going to go ahead and take advantage of the free resources on Family Search, because they're also just not a bad way to find probate records. They're a little bit more, a little bit easier to work with. So I now see that there are two districts in Westminster, in Windham County. Westminster District and Marlborough District. I thought I saw, I'm going to actually just scroll up here and look. Halifax. Okay, I'm looking for any mention because I thought I saw back before Judge of Probate. I thought I saw in the, we were looking at Joseph Perry, which was the wrong person, and I was losing my cookies about the fact that it was the wrong person. But I thought that I saw at the beginning of that record that it said it was in Marlborough District. So that's what I want to go back and confirm. Oh, you're doing that back button thing. Get me back there. There we go. Esquire, District of Marlborough. Right, so here's that Joseph Perry record that we looked at a moment ago. The record that we actually wanted was this guy down here, Rachel Hammond and Joseph Hammond on this next page. But it means that another record in this book says it's the record from Marlborough District. That just tells me I'm going to start there. It doesn't mean I'm not going to look in Westminster later if I don't get what I want. So let's go look at this and then let's see. Good news, good news, good news. Okay, so here we are at this record. This is probate records over a long period of time with a general index. And it says it's on film. 20 microfilm reels, so that's a lot. And as we scroll down here, this is going to tell us all the component pieces, parts that make up those records, which is actually super good when we're looking for much earlier records, because there's fewer of them, because fewer people were alive then, and fewer people were making records. Phew. And so we can zero in on the specific film that we want. I feel like this is comparable to the experience I would have if I went to the library and was going through all these films by hand. There'd be these little boxes and they would have probably this description on them. Okay. But what we know is that we're looking for Joseph Hammond, who died about 1806. Oh, and look at what's interesting here. Probate records, volume 3 through 4, 1804 to 1810. That heading matches right here, right? What that's telling us is Ancestry is using the same films, the same ones, same films. Might not be the worst thing to say that we know we're on page 138. I don't know if that's going to help us find what we're looking for or not in here, but that's what we're looking at. What I'm going to do, rather than dive into that and page around, oh, sorry, and then one other thing that tells us that we can do anything at all with what's on this page is that we are looking on the right-hand column for format, and happy, happy, happy news whenever we see the little camera icon. The little camera icon means not only do these images exist, but I can get to them online from my browser to show you. I can get to them from here. We are going to run into records elsewhere where the icon is different. It's either a little magnifying glass or it's some other stuff. There's a couple of other states that these records can be in where they're on microfilm, but they have, oh, if it's a picture of a little reel, a little microfilm reel, that super sad means that it's been microfilmed but not yet digitized, which means that I could go to the location listed in the record and I could physically get the microfilm and put it on a physical reader. Or there's another one which is even to me sadder, which is it's been digitized, but they will only let you look at it using a computer that is physically at the family history library. That is a thing. I think it has to do with copyright or what. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why it's that. But what it means is I can't get to it from my browser. These I can. This is good news. I am going to start with the index because I would like to see if it's going to tell me anything about how many records for how many Hammonds overall are in this collection. I don't know yet what kind of index it is or what page I want to be on, but I'm just going to pick a page. I did make a good guess and I got to some H's, which is good. And not everybody's favorite handwriting. Hey, there we go. Okay. Here it is. Hammond Joe, right? And we've got that little squiggly bit means that is how they abbreviated certain names. So it was very common for it to be J-O with a little superscript S would be short for Joseph. And so I'm going to assume that that's what this is. I suppose it could be Job, but, you know. Oh, and then James would be J-A with a little S. And now I'm confused because this one looks like it's definitely J something. That tail looks an awful lot more like an A, but I don't know for sure. Don't know for sure. So that could be a James. And then this says GDN, which I'm going to wild guess is going to mean guardian. But I don't know if that helps us or not. And so here we have Hammond, Joe's. This is probably our guy. And it says 3, 4. And maybe also that 6. That 6 might also be for him because it's probably not for this person. 3, 4, 6. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's telling us. I guess that means that's what volume of the book he's in, but we already knew he was in 3 and 4. Well, all right, we're going to go brow. I guess sadly, it isn't giving us page numbers. So that's a bummer. I wonder if there's another index. So I think what that's telling us is that he's in volume 3, volume 4, and maybe volume 6. And then I think that refers to these. That's going to be a time frame that makes sense. Why would he be in volume 6 after 1810? I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading that wrong. But we know we know the person whose records we're looking for, the Joseph of Whitingham who was married to a Rachel. That guy is in this book. So let's look at this book. And there are 600 images, just like at Ancestry, 600 images. And we knew that we found our guy originally on page 138. And because that was Administration, yep, sure enough, here it is. By the way, sometimes you will find that they have been treated digitally differently and are more readable on either are more might be more readable on Ancestry or on Family Search or whatever, vice versa. Okay, this is the page we were looking at. Sadly, I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to actually do some more paging through here. Maybe. There's page numbers. Let's go see. Let's go back to page 1. We're back at page 1. Is there an index? Oh, there's an index to this volume. Good. Oh, good. Okay, that's going to help because what we want to see, we are trying to figure out is where's the rest of it? Okay. Yes. Okay, here it is. Ooh, okay. So in this book, I'm assuming since this is page 1, this must be volume 3. And then there must be a volume 4 there might still be a volume 4, which would be another book. The reason I care about that is if there is, the other book might be another index with more pages. Okay. 233 is the page we just looked at, and it had his administration and his inventory. And we knew that. Those were those 2 paragraphs. Or rather, the appointment of somebody to do his inventory. Committee. Committee, that's what that stands for. Committee. Committee to inventory. Okay. Hammond Joseph, his administration, 233. Committee to inventory, 233. We saw that. 270. And then 3 something 4. 354. 384. Heck if I know, but we'll find out. All right, somebody with handwriting issues. So some inventory. So we'll be able to find out. It sadly doesn't say his will, but maybe we find that somewhere else, or maybe he died without one, which would be super bummer. Okay, so we knew we were on page 138. Sorry, we knew that this page 233 was equal to image number 138. So then we want a bit ahead. Yeah, no, I can't do that math. I can't do that math. Greg is going crazy because he can do that math and he knows what image. What image am I looking for, Cranky? Okay, so there's 138. This is awesome. I can tell this is the one I previously visited because you can see that it's a different size from the other ones. Once I've zoomed in and then I zoom back out, it stays this different size. I don't know why. It just does that. So, but it's helpful for navigation because I can find my way around. So that's 138, 9, 140, 145, 150. What I'm looking for is about, what is it, about 37 pages ahead. So maybe around here. Looking for 270. 295, too far. 274. Progress. Is that this? 268, too far. Right here. Should be right here. 270. Hey! An inventory of the estate of Joseph Hammond. So as a reminder that why we're here, why we're here is that we're trying to find there's this Joseph Hammond who lives in Whitingham, Vermont. We are trying to find any evidence at all that would tell us either way if this Joseph was related to my Antipas Hammond, who is of the right age to be this guy's son and also lives in Whitingham. So right now, oh, and we now know District of Marlborough. So if that matters, okay, District of Marlborough, Whitingham County. We get this neat list of all the stuff he owned and how much it was appraised to be worth. A gun and bayonet. There you go. All right. And so he had stuff. I have no idea if this is a lot of stuff for that time period. I don't know if he was well off. or if he was middle class. I have no clue at this point, but it's really neat to look at all this stuff because they really did index, or inventory like everything. One cotton shirt, handkerchief, love it. One pair of overalls, woolen. 7 pair men's stockings. I love this so. Velvet breeches. Velvet breeches. Black broadcloth coat and vest. Great coat, woolen coat, cotton and linen ditto coat. Sailor jacket. This guy was styling. It's so exciting. Okay. That's all we have. So that tells us about his stuff. And then the next page is a different person. Okay, so that inventory was recorded. Do we have a date? Upon oath. Down at the bottom. Sometimes at the top, sometimes at the bottom. Written inventory was taken. The appraisement made September 1806 by these dudes. Those people would normally not be the family. I am assuming that that's intentional, that they pick people that don't have an interest in the estate. But yeah, typically you'll see the appraisers be not relatives, so that's not going to tell us anything one way or another. Is my hair sticking up weird? Let's check. I bet it is. Oh, it totally is. Oh, it's rocking. Okay. I'm going with it. Okay, so we have an inventory, no relatives listed. Let's go back, because the next page, so this was that page 270, and then we had a page 350, I don't know, that was in the index. This is where that scrolling of these pages is really annoying. Get back up to that. Well, hang on. Maybe if I just go 1. Okay. Yep, 1. And I believe it is this one. Yep. This image here is where we're listed. So additional inventory 354. I find myself really curious about volume 3 versus he is also in volume 4. So that next page of additional inventory is just going to be additional. Given that the first inventory did not list any names, and I want names, this didn't really, I don't know that additional inventory is going to help me very much yet. But what I want to do is I want to scroll through and find where volume 4 is, because it said he was also listed in volume 4. Oh, look. Okay. Yep. So this is the beginning of volume 4. I would expect that volume 4, you see, you get all this stuff that they took images of to make it so you could see on the microfilm where things stop and end. So volume 3 ends here. What that means is that's a physical book, volume 3, and they ran out of room. They started a new physical book. In fact, they microfilmed the book cover. Right? So this is volume 4. If you were in the town clerk's office or whatever and looking it up, you'd be looking at a bookshelf with all that stuff across. Okay, so now we're in volume 4. It said in that general index that he was in 3, 4, and maybe 6. So I want to find out if he's in volume 4. The D's, that's surname D, so I want to keep going, looking for surname H. That's G. And is he in here? Shout out in the chat if you spot him. Hammond Joseph. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, heirs. Heirs are named. Okay, committee to set off widow's dower. Honestly, I should go study dowry more than I have and know that we understand that it had something to do with the money that a single woman's family would give her to take into her marriage. There's stuff that happens with a widow's right of dower after her husband predeceases her. I think it has to do with her ability to take that on for her own maintenance or to another marriage, but I don't know. But it's usually in things like this where there's a surviving widow. Committee of division, that's good. Division is probably division of that estate amongst his heirs. Really good chance we might find out who his heirs are. So we want in this volume, page 43 and page 173. So we want to go about 43 pages on from this, maybe? I don't know. Let's just do this. 353. That'll probably be too far. And see what page we end up on. Because I think it might be actually 2 pages to an image. Which it is. So I went way too far. So I want page 43. Again, apologies to all of you that are good at math in your head, because I am really not. And why is it doing that? 29, 40, better. Okay, better. And I'm just triangulating, so my life is a little less efficient than it could be, is what we're saying here. 43. Nope, that's not him. This guy. Here we are. Okay. That was, remember, committee to set off dower. Joseph Hammond, estate, committee to set off widow's dower. We got, upon application of the administrators of the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham, in said district deceased, for a warrant to set off to widow Rachel Hammond, which we knew, her dower, which happens to her of the said estate. Jabez Foster, Nathan Green, and William Stone were appointed a committee for that purpose, and to make return as soon as may be. And then it goes on to talk about somebody else. So that moves on to the next case. So that was just, they showed up, they asked for permission, they got it, they went away. And what date this is? 1808. It's a long time. So this is taking them a long time to go through. They are gone away for 2 years to do stuff. I always wonder, I don't actually know why it takes them this long. Okay, so this is still the same guy, the 1806 guy. We still have not found any evidence as to why, as to whether he is related to my Antipas Hammond of Whitingham. We just don't know. Nothing yet. So what we want to do, let's go ahead and go, we're trying to get to page 170 something. 173, if I remember. So we're going to go, just jump 100 pages up. We're looking for page 173. And of course we went way too far because it's 2 pages per. So let's go to page 400. Not bad. 10. 175. Hey! Okay, there's Joseph Hammond. So, type in the chat. Okay. Okay, here we are. Oh, look at that. Hammond Joseph, estate agent for something heirs. Look at that. Nathan Green of Whitingham in said district appointed agent to, I don't know what agent means, Abigail Wilbur, Nancy Hammett, and Stephen Hammond heirs. Hype in the chat. Hype, everybody. We found it. We found it. I need a soundboard so I can sound that siren. Oh, we found it. We found it. We found it. Antipas Hammond is right here. Okay, but what does it say? What does it say? No, wait. Oh, no. Wait. That has nothing to do with Joseph's estate. You're killing me right now. All right, what are we doing? Wait, what is this? Okay. Read the whole thing. Okay. Read the whole thing. Okay. Abel Whitney. Okay, sorry. Skimming is a problem. But so this one up here appointed a committee to set up the widow of Abel Whitney. Different record. We're going to skip over. That's the dividing line. Hammond Joseph's estate committee to divide. Right, we said that was useful. Jabez Foster Esquire, Nathan Green, and William Stone were appointed a committee to divide the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham, in said district, deceased, among the heirs to said estate, and a warrant issued to them accordingly. Great. Who were they? Killing me. Okay. And this is again 1808, right? Yeah. It's been 2 years. It may have taken him that long to pay off his debts. That is possible. Okay. This, David Gower, his guardian. This is an unrelated record. There's a horizontal line here and a horizontal line. It just happens to be in the same spot. They're freaking killing me. Okay. Samuel Parker was appointed guardian to David Gowan, a minor, and heir to the estate of Bartholomew Gowan, and the said Samuel Parker, a principal, and Antipas Hammond, a surety, gave bond in the sum of $100 for the faithful discharge. He's just a signatory to a bond, Antipas is. That is insane. Because he's not named as... This record has nothing to do with Joseph Hammond's estate. Okay. He's in the courtroom on the same day. Doesn't prove a relationship at all. Let's go to the second page and see, because it named... we're going to come back to that other one because that's super interesting. Okay. Huh. Oh, interesting. Sorry, we didn't finish that prior record. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back and read it properly. We weren't done down here. Okay, let's start over. This wasn't done. I didn't realize it wasn't done. It's not done. Nathan Green of Whitingham in said district is appointed agent to Abigail Wilbur, Nancy Hammett, and Stephen Hammond, heirs, comma, punctuation saves lives, people, comma, heirs to the estate of, the heirs is written twice, heirs to the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham aforesaid, deceased, the said heirs being out of the state. Okay, fine. And then there's a dividing line, and now we're on to something Crosby, so that's a different person's record. So this is the one we wanted. We had those two records, and they're separate, and there's a record in between them. And those were the two that were referenced in the index. Okay. I prematurely celebrate. This Antipas Hammond is taunting me. I'm going to move him off the page. Okay. Here's what's interesting about that. Abigail, let's go back to, we kept this up here in this page, the Hammond book. I'm going to zoom in on Mr. the Hammond book. The Hammond book told us that Joseph, Yar, who married Rachel, and is said afterwards to have moved to the state of New York, all trace of him afterwards being lost, had Abigail, Nancy, and Stephen, as well as a Matilda and an Antipas. This guy, living in Whitingham, Vermont, who died in 1806, has Abigail, Nancy, and Stephen in the same order. Now, why isn't Matilda listed here, and why isn't Antipas listed here? Well, it gave us a clue, didn't it? Because on the next page, I'm not going to flip back to that page again. On the second page after this, it said these three get an agent because they have moved out of state. They get an agent to represent them in the Whitingham court because they don't live in Whitingham anymore. And if they moved out of state and they're still living, it means that they're adults. It's not like they moved children away with another family. It could happen, but I don't think that's what happened. And they are probably, it probably would have said if they were minors. And it's 1806, and at least Abigail and Nancy had been born before 1780. So we know that they're of age. This, to me, is a decently strong connection that binds us a couple different ways. It does a few different things, and the timing on that is good. This is it's going to be a lovely place to wrap this up and leave it, right? Here's the thing. We got baptism records in Rochester, Massachusetts for Joseph and Rachel Hammond, who had 4 children baptized in 1780 in Rochester. They were Abigail, Matilda, Nancy, and Antipas. The book has Abigail, Nancy, Matilda, and Antipas, and a Stephen listed as the children of Joseph and Rachel. And this record has Abigail, Nancy, and Stephen. And the record is in Whitingham, which is where we knew Antipas was living because he got married there in 1801 and he was having children there in 1805. Hello, Wes. And so therefore, I think we can triangulate among all those records. It is now become, I think, really reasonable to assume that this is all the same family. And Abigail, Nancy, and Stephen have moved out of state, but Antipas has not moved out of state. He doesn't need his own agent because he hasn't moved out of state. He still lives there. He is still having children born in Whitingham at this time. So the likelihood that this is the right family for my Antipas, I think we're pretty much there. I need a soundboard with the horn that I can sound, but I think we're there. I think this is it. And in fact, I just think it's hilarious that he's on this page. Let's finish the job. We also think he's in book number 6. So we got to go back up to, back button always bites me there. We got to go to record book number 6. I want to see what the rest of that estate is, if it's true that he's in there. This is volume 5. So we're going to scroll down and try to find where book number 6 starts. Nope, that's false alarm. And start volume 6. Here's volume 6. Let's find a Hammond in the index. Too far. Oh, look, Hammond Joseph, division, page 46. Handy as heck. Let's add about, see, I'm getting better at this. Peter Ward, neat. Okay, 20, did that say 26? What did that say? No, it said, oh, I did this. All right. All right, come on, book 6. We can do this. We can do this. We're going to get, if it reports on the division, what I'm really hoping it's going to tell us is, I hope that means who got what. And I hope it means by name who got what. And I hope Antipas got a thing. Because if he's named in there, then we will have then we will have the founded party. Right? Okay. Where was I? I was about here. Did the exact same thing last time. Okay. Here we are. All right, we're on 499. Yes, we want page 46. Okay. 46. 26. Okay, we want 46. Boom. Yes. Okay. What a... Come to me. Come to me. Minutes of the division of the estate of Joseph Hammond, late of Whitingham, deceased, as made by the committee appointed by the Honorable Judge of Probate for the District of Marlborough. It took them until 1814 to get this done. To the widow, 13 acres, yada, 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 description of the property, long description of the property. You see why they abstract these things? There may come a day when I want to go back and find out exactly how to track that description of that property, because I could go visit it, right? To Stephen, 13 acres. Description. Whoa! There it is! There it is! There's my guy. Yes! He left property to his son Antipas. It doesn't say his son. It doesn't say his son. To Rachel. That's so interesting. To the widow and then to Rachel. Huh. Did he also have a daughter, Rachel? That's interesting. Okay. I mean, it might make sense. Nancy. Oh, look, they've handily underlined and they've given us some paragraphs. I actually really appreciate that. It's making it a little bit easier to read. Nabby. All right, I'm going to do a thing. Nabby is, here, look. Abigail, commonly called Nabby. Now, That's a different Abigail. That's this Abigail. But apparently that was a nickname that they had. So that would be Abigail, Nabby. Remember that what we're trying to do is keep matching that family back to that family from Rochester, right? So we have a Joseph and Rachel who had Abigail, Matilda, Nancy, Antipas, and Stephen. It's Matilda! Matilda's in here! That's the same family. That's the same family. Okay, so to recap, we know we have this family unit described in this book. Joseph, who married Rachel Winslow and had these 5 children. We found, and we knew from further up on the page, we know from reading back in his family that he's the son of Antipas and Abigail. And this family was born in Rochester, New York. This family lived and the children were born in Rochester, Massachusetts, not New York. Rochester, Massachusetts. Okay. Joseph married Rachel Winslow, probably in Rochester or near Rochester, Massachusetts. We found a baptism record for the first 4 out of those 5 children in Rochester, Massachusetts. So we now have this family group. And then we found a Joseph Hammond in Whitingham, Vermont, which is where my Antipas and his family group came from. And so Joseph is here. What we have just found in the probate, in the division of the estate, that is clearly the same family group. It is a Joseph with a wife, Rachel. It didn't name the widow on the page where it said the widow, but we knew from the administration earlier that the widow's name is Rachel. So we have a Joseph, Rachel. We have Nabby, which is short for Abigail. Nancy, Matilda, Antipas, and Stephen. So this is clearly the same family group. They're also all the right ages, right, to be those people. We also know from the appointment of the agent, we know the surname of Nancy and of Abigail. I don't remember which one was which now, but we can go back to that page back in volume 4 and find out what their married surnames were. We also know from that agent record that Nancy, Abigail, and Stephen were living out of the state. It doesn't say where, but not in Vermont. And we don't think Antipas has moved yet. We know that Antipas ends up in Genesee County, New York, because that's where we found his records that tied him to my family. And he and all of his children who were born in Whitingham ended up in Genesee County, New York, and then my ancestor Honeywell ended up and went from there to western Pennsylvania and on to Iowa. So this is now that family. We are confident that that is that family. And I could go back into Ancestry here. I could go find that record in Ancestry. The reason I might want to do that is volume 6 here. Right? Volume 6 is where that division of estate is. The reason I might want to go ahead and do it that way is I can connect it to it's kind of, I can do this web address and link it back to, let's go ahead and do that. Just so I don't lose it, right? I'm going to reopen Ancestry. What I want to do is, and this is a thing to remember to do every time we are wrapping up a session and we want to move on, is like, okay, I just found all this breakthrough stuff. I am going to go over by a few minutes because I started a minute or two late. I'm going to go over by a few minutes and type in a few of these pieces of information. So I'll go ahead and add a web link. Oh my gosh, probate, division of estate, probate, division of estate, naming heirs. There. That's it. So we have that. I'm curious if that link works. Does that link go where I want it to go? Yes, it does. Looks fantastic. Looks great. Feels really good. I fixed the bot, so feel free to spam emotes in the chat if you're feeling half as good about this as I am. This is such a lovely breakthrough. July 1814. What's really interesting about this that we have not quite reckoned with yet is that Antipas Hammond actually dies in 1814 in Genesee County, New York. So I was a little worried that we were going to turn him up being deceased. And do we know when he dies? Man, so he actually was already dead. Had word gotten back yet? You would think that land is going to go to his heirs, I guess. I don't know. I'm a little worried that that's not mentioned, but I'm not that worried. It's close enough. It's good enough. It's the same guy. There's not two Antipas Hammonds living in Whitingham. There's just not. There's just not. Okay. That does a thing for us. That does a thing. That does two things. Okay, so what we can now do, got this extra tab here, what we can do, if I want to go back and really tidy this up, what I would do is I'd go in on Ancestry, where I do have my regular account, I have the membership too, right? I would go in on Ancestry, I'd find those same pages that we just found in Family Search, and I would attach them as records to this because as sources, and I would put in all those probate facts. So we now know, however, that Joseph Hammond here, we can do a couple things with Joseph Hammond. I made it angry. There we go. I'm taking off the question mark. I'm taking it off. I'm taking it off. Question mark is coming off. He's real. We're keeping him. And I'm going to put in here that he died in about 1806. Oops. I'm still in all caps. About 1806 in Whitingham, Vermont. Whitingham, Vermont. There. Now, if I'm smart, because I'm not, I'm frequently not, I'm gonna go put in here. Our first one was July, so I'm gonna now. We talked about probate, and we saw in reading through the probate a lot of activities. There are similarities in probate from state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So I've seen those before, and I don't always see them exactly laid out that way or in exactly that order, but roughly, we could go say, and Ancestry uses some standard genealogical categories for facts and events. So they've got this drop down of types of facts that you can add to the list, the timeline list of facts. What I want to do is I'm using probate as the catch-all for those different, because it doesn't have a special fact for administration and inventory and all that. I'm just going to say a probate, probate is the type of court that they're working in. And I'm going to say July 1806 was the first record, and it was in Marlborough, Vermont, District of Marlborough. I'm actually going to make that less confusing and say Windham County. Windham County, Vermont, District, typing, Marlborough, administration granted to widow, wait, didn't say widow, granted to Rachel Hammond and some other guy, and inventory committee appointed. Okay. Right? Because those two things happened, and that was in, if I were smart, I'm not, in volume 3, page 233. I guess I'm smart enough to remember what page number it was on. Okay. I could then add another probate record. All right. We had probate record 1808 was when we had that one. Again, we're going to go Windham County, Vermont. Agent appointed for heirs Abigail something, Nancy something, and Stephen. I really got to go back and look those up. who are living out of state. Hopefully that underscore is going to remind me to go back and look them up and fill that in. And then 1814, July 1814 was the last probate, was division of estate. That is making me suspicious as to, I don't know whether we're going to find a will or not, right? You'll notice we didn't see a will referenced. Windham County, Vermont. Division of estate among heirs. Widow not named. And then Stephen, Rachel, question mark, widow. Antipas, right? Because they spelled it funky. Antipas. Stephen, Rachel. I'm putting them in the order that they're listed in the document. Nancy, Nabby, and Matilda. Nancy, Nabby, Abigail, question mark, and Matilda. Relationships not specified. Because it doesn't say my son Stephen, my son Antipas, right? It doesn't say that. It just says them by name. And it didn't give the female people's surnames at all. So we don't know. Here we go. Division of the estate. September 8th. Wait. Oh, September 8th, 1808. Oh, September 8th, 1808. It says. Okay. I don't know why it's recorded in July 1814, but that September 8th, 1808 is much, much better. That removes the worry that I had. So let's fix this. 9/8, September 8th, 1808. Recorded in July 1814 for some reason. Eventually I run out of room in this box. It doesn't take an infinite amount of text, but it is generous enough that I can put some stuff in there. Okay, I am now less panicky about the fact that Antipas is named there because he absolutely was living and was probably still in Windham County, Vermont in 1808. This is why it's useful to do the thing that I didn't actually clean up and go back and do with Antipas. I didn't go back and add all of his children and do any work to find the dates of birth of the children, but it would be useful because it will tell us when he moved, maybe, right? We already know that they were sketchy about recording the births of the children because we know that Honeywell is well and truly missing. The town records in Whitingham only record 3 children for him, even though we know he had 5 because they're in the Guardian record. So we don't have the dates of birth of the other 2. It is possible that that's because he was on the road to New York at the time they were born, or any number of things. But if we had a record of a child being born in Whitingham at any other time. So we know he was there in 1804 because that's when Lewis was born. Ancestry does helpfully put that in the timeline. We think he was because Honeywell's records typically say that Honeywell was born in Vermont, although we did find at least one that said Honeywell was born in New York, which could have been on the road, right? But it helps if we can lock down any of the other siblings and know when they were born and whether they were in Vermont or not. If they were in Whitingham, that would help us to feel more confident that Antipas was still living there at that time. But what we have now is we now have Rachel Winslow. We know Rachel Winslow because that's from the Hammond book. We don't know when she was born. The Hammond book doesn't say. But we do know they were married. Can I just copy this? Ooh. Yes, we do. We know they were married in, come on. Fine. Married. Yes. Probably in Rochester, although I can wait and find out if I find a record for that. And I can put Hammond book right there. Now, what's helpful about that is I added that as a record to Joseph, but because Rachel is linked, she also gets that marriage record, and now hers says Hammond book. Now, if I'm smart, and I'm not, I'm going to go and put page 316. I'd like to put page 317 because that's the actual page that Joseph is on. Joseph is on page 317, so I want to put a link, oops, not there, here to Rachel Winslow. Hammond book. Oh, I could be smart and say page 251. Page 251. Okay, and then I want to go back to Joseph and say Hammond book, page 251, and now we know all kinds of things. Let's go ahead and finish filling in the children because that family grouping was so important to us confirming that this was the right person. So we want to go, there's a feature that's kind of cool that makes that a tiny bit easier but also kind of annoying. So we're on Joseph Hammond. We can go under here. They added this very quietly a couple of years ago. We get a thing called a family group sheet. I wish we could bulk add children, but we can't. So we got an Abigail Hammond, female, by now surely deceased because she was born before 1780. I could put Abigail, was Matilda the next one? Yes, Matilda is the next one. Matilda Hammond. So if I wanted to, I could do this too. Born before 1780. All right. We don't know for sure Rochester, but probably close enough. That's also going to get us that record. And we know after 1808. We don't know if she wasn't living out of state, so she was somewhere in Vermont, but we don't know if she died in Vermont, so we won't put that. So that's Matilda. We didn't have a married name for her. It annoys me that I can't edit once I've added them, but I'll go back. Matilda, then we want Nancy. It is somewhat useful to remember that Nancy was oftentimes a nickname for the name Anne. Yes, nicknames got weird. I don't know why. It's a thing. But we have not seen any evidence whatsoever anywhere of her using the name Anne. There came a point where the nickname Nancy was so commonly used that it took on a life of its own and became a name. Before 1780. So I would, if I found a record of a child named Anne for this family, I might be looking at could they be the same child, because that name might be the same. But in this case, it looks like that was actually her name in its own right. She was died after 1808 when the estate was divided, and we don't know where. I could say not Vermont, but I don't think Ancestry would like that. And I suppose I don't know for sure that she didn't come back, but moved out of state. I want to go back and find that probate record with their married names because I'd like to plug those in. And then we have a Stephen. And we think maybe he was born after 1780. So after 1780, in Rochester, we don't know if he was born in Rochester or after they went to Vermont. And then he was died after 1808, out of state. We don't know where. So this guy is a bit of a mystery. And what'll happen, so now if I go back to Joseph's profile, I'm going to get 80 bazillion hits for this guy eventually. We're going to go fix up Abigail, and we're going to say she was born before 1780 in Rochester. She might not have been born in Rochester, but I'm going with close enough, and she died after 1808. And she was also one of the out-of-state contingent. What's frustrating is because all four of these were baptized at the same time, we also don't know exactly what order they were in. And Ancestry is going to not put them in. It will put them in chronological order if I enter them that way, but it's not going to know enough to put them in chronological order, which is frustrating. What I will sometimes do before 1780 in Rochester, what I will sometimes do is I might go in and put estimates for those dates in, sometimes just to solve the fact that they're not listed in order, and that's annoying to me. There's some other tools. Some of the desktop Family Tree Maker ones will allow you to actually specify the order of the children, even if you don't know the dates, which can be helpful if you have multiple sources that list them in the same order, which we didn't actually in this case, right? The order they're listed in the Hammond book that we thought might be their birth order, might be by age. The order they're listed in that book did not match the order they were listed in that estate division. So, because Matilda was last, like really not even reverse order, right? Not cleanly even reverse order, because they were in. And I tried to indicate in the note on Joseph's profile here, Stephen, Rachel, Antipas, Nancy, Nabby, Matilda. That's really not in any kind of order. There it is. So a couple things I would want to do to go clean this back up is to go back to where was that estate agent appointed? It was here. It was in this one. It was in volume 4. If I were smart, I would have recorded the image numbers on all of these, and I'm not. I would have recorded all the image numbers so that I could go back to them when I wanted to read those records again. I'm just not that smart. But we're going to go up to volume 4. There's volume 4. I'm going to go find the Hammond page. Find what page they were on. Because I want to go fill in their married names. Or at least, like at least one of their married names, right? Okay. Agent for something heirs. Absent heirs. Agent for absent heirs. Absent. Okay. Absent. Got it. We want to add that many, maybe. 173 is the page I'm looking for. There's so much neat stuff that I can go back and read, right? Here. All right. Oh, yeah. 400. 173. Hey, there it is. There it is. Said heirs being out of the state. I want those names. There they are. Abigail Wilbur. Let's go plug that in. Abigail Hammond Wilbur. And you will remember that I do it this way. If it's a sibling, I don't care to go do genealogical history of their spouse. That person's not related to me. That family's only interesting if it helps further my research. It usually doesn't. So Abigail Hammond Wilbur was born in Massachusetts, might have lived in Vermont for a time, might have skipped Vermont if she was already of age when her father moved. So she's here. We have no idea what state she lived in. Then we have, we'll go back here, Nancy I think that says Hammett. I've read enough, I've seen enough butchered HAMMs in my life to think that that's what that is. So Nancy Hammond Hammett. Hammett. Here, and she is also out of state, but we don't know where. And then Stephen, that's his married name. And then Matilda, we don't know anything about. She may also have married, because remember that division didn't indicate. The other thing that we might do, we won't do it today, but something else of interest is, it didn't pop up quite this way on, well, let's go look, on Family Search. I guess it did. Is if we scroll down here, this is all these probate records. Right, there was a lot of other stuff. Probate records, Marlborough District probate records, but that starts in 1809, so that's after us. Collection record, I don't know what that means. And that's also Westminster District, which is not our district. Indexes. So, ancestry for Windham County has these things called estate files. Oh, these are much later. Oh, 1910, 1900, 1899. That's too late. That's a little earlier. 1881. Folders, 1855. So I want to take a look at all of those dates to see, because these are the bundles of that might include things like the actual wills. It looks like these don't go back far enough, right? Because I'm trying to get to 1806 to 1808. Those look too new, but look at how the dates are not in any particular order. They really jump around. So I might want to go through and really scan all of these records to see, is there any chance that there's a bundle that would have Joseph Hammond's will in it? Oh, 1830. Closer, 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 closer. 1830, 1847. Right, so can I get back far enough to find a record of his will? Because I'd like to see if he has a will. If the will is there, it should name the same number of children. It might state explicitly the relationships to confirm that there is children, but I'm assuming that they are. And it might, guardianship files, that would be relevant if any of his children were underage, but we think all of them were of age. Oh, there's that same general index that we looked at, right? So I'm scanning through for Windham County. Ancestry is giving me, this is how I have to look at them. It's frustrating, but they're giving me potentially a lot more information. So I want to make sure that I haven't missed out on anything that might be relevant to this family. Yeah, see, we've got some that go back to the 1830s. It's not quite back far enough, but it's close. Boy, that's a lot of. Oh, well, no. That's no, nice try. That's the same book I was looking at. Okay. Fine. Anyway, so still, yeah, see, those are later. And they index them under different names. So we don't assume that just because I've gotten into the 1900s that everything under this will be older. It might not be. It looks like, just from scanning, it looks like we got it all. But we don't know for 100% sure, but it looks like we did. And it is, as you know, it is about that time. So, yeah, it's way past about that time. Good for us. We can now look at some of the hints for Joseph. See if we got anything else interesting. So we got that 1790 census. We've got that 1800 census. So now that we have what we have, I feel pretty confident, even though the ages didn't match, I feel pretty confident that this actually is this guy and his family. And that maybe that's Joseph and maybe Stephen is living in the household, but maybe by that time Stephen has moved out of state and it's Antipas in the household, and just that the ages seem to be wrong. Right. So we have a couple places we can go that we will not go through today, but we have a number of things now that this is going to enable us to do. Because what we can do is we have now, drum roll, we have now linked Antipas Hammond to a person who is actually in the Hammond book. And what that's going to give us that is humongous is this now does the same thing for us here. This is our guy, Antipas. It does the same thing for us that the Shumway book did for Emily Shumway's family, which is now that we've bridged over a gap of where we had problems with a bunch of records, we've tied these folks together. We now have this Joseph, who is 5th generation of people listed in this book. We now know who his parents were, Antipas Hammond and Abigail Swift. That'll be exciting. We'll be able to go plug them in. And we know that Antipas is the 3rd son of Benjamin II, who is the son of Benjamin, who is the son of this William guy. Can't wait to get to talk to you about William, because that one is not all is as it seems kind of a dude. We will go do that work. So this takes us back to our original Hammond immigrant ancestor to the New World is Benjamin Hammond. It's not William. Benjamin Hammond, who lived in Plymouth County, Massachusetts. Woo! which means now we have the Shumways all the way back to our original immigrant ancestor, Peter Shumway, and we have the Hammonds all the way back to the original Hammond immigrant ancestor, Benjamin. Very exciting. We still have, the world has exploded for us in terms of the research that we have, because we still have, as yet unexplored, we have the book of the Blodgett family, which is going to take us back to the original Blodgett immigrant ancestor on that branch. And we also now know that we have a Rachel Winslow here who's going to be able to be explored. We're going to have, this is going to be Antipas and Abigail Swift up here. There's going to be a Swift family that we can go off and explore. And that's going to take us back to an immigrant. I believe both of these families will be able to get back to original immigrant ancestors. And we now are starting to see that this is a big cluster of families that are solidly New England colonists, early New England colonists. We've already talked about how Joseph was of adult age in the Revolution. We didn't see any evidence of him fighting in the Revolution, but it is suspicious that he then moved very soon after the Revolutionary War. He moved to Vermont. I would be curious to see if that was a land grant based on his service, right? Or if any of the New York land was that his children moved to. Might have been land grant. I don't actually remember if the rest of his children went to New York or someplace else, but Antipas went to New York. So it is plausible, right? Joseph Hammond would have been in his early 20s in the during the Revolutionary War. Plausible that he would be a Revolutionary War ancestor. We didn't actually go look at the generations on Emily Shumway's family, but presumably somebody in that line was male and of fighting age in the Revolution and was living in the right place to be doing that. So we could go check and see if we have a Revolutionary ancestor there. What I find fascinating is it doesn't, if you are, if your family was in North America at the time of the Revolution, if you can get back far enough to find ancestors who were here, it's not meaning, also meaning like if you didn't come from a later immigrant family. On my mother's side, all of her relatives immigrated to the, almost all, a majority of her ancestors immigrated to North America after the Revolution had happened. So oh, that's interesting, right? So that whole big deal we make of revolutionary ancestors is kind of a way of excluding the more recent immigrants, isn't it? Interesting. So her family largely doesn't get back to like a whole Daughters of the American Revolution thing, except on one branch where it does. But the majority of her family is later. This family very solidly there. So if you find something like this where you've got this family that is in North America for really any length of time, finding Civil War ancestors becomes pretty easy. And then finding Revolutionary War ancestors becomes pretty easy. And you know what? That's actually also, it's harder to find them for African Americans who were living here, but there are very cool records of African American ancestors who served in Revolutionary War and in the Civil War. Henry Louis Gates does a lot of profiles with those, and those are very exciting. So I don't want to say that those kinds of cool discoveries are just for white people, because they're not just for white people. It's way harder to find them for anybody else, but not impossible, which is very cool. In fact, Henry Louis Gates is a member of the Sons of the American Revolution because of his ancestors, his black ancestor service. I think he has white ancestors too. Might be the white ones. That does it for today. Thanks for staying over. For those of you who stuck around to watch the stream. A little bit of a slow start today on the research, wandered around, but we did make a big discovery. I want you to know, I think I have seen probate records like that. Like, I did know that we were going to find that Joseph and Rachel were Antipas's parents. I knew that that was going to happen, but I couldn't remember how I did it. So we did kind of reproduce those steps on this stream, and I am pretty sure that some of those pages of that probate record were things I hadn't seen before today. So the excitement was real. It's not completely faked. I do know where this search is going, but being able to recreate the proof is kind of what this is about, because I want to show you how I did it. As always, thanks to those of you who joined in chat. Great to see you. If you're one who's just lurking, thanks for being here. It's awesome. Please do feel free to participate in chat and ask questions. The intent of the live stream is to make this something that you can take and use for your research and make it interesting to you. So let me know how to do that. Finally, we're going to end on a programming note. My stepfather is having surgery on Wednesday, so I am pretty sure that I'm not going to have a stream this Wednesday. I might. So if you care about that sort of thing, you can follow and it will default you to be notified when I go live. Um, so do that, but I probably won't stream on Wednesday, in which case, and then next Sunday is Easter Sunday, but I'm still in social isolation land. So I think I'm going to be here, and I think I don't have any place else to be but to come on stream and talk about our families on Easter. So I'll probably do that. And obviously, if you can join, that'll be great. So thanks again for joining on this Sunday, spending time with us. And it was fun, and I'll see you next time.